and a very warm welcome to the Analyst dated 7th May 2025, brought to you by Vajiram and Ravi, wherein we'll be covering the 7th set of current affairs issues which are featured in today's newspaper. And the handout of this very discussion is available in the description below for your future reference. Coming to the analysis section, firstly we'll try to comprehensively analyze the relation between India and UK, as recently the two countries have finalized the free trade agreement. Moving on to the second topic, herein we'll be understanding the need, significance and the challenges with respect to lateral entry in civil services in India. Moving on to the simplified section, herein we'll be covering the 5 set of topics in the most simple manner possible, and we'll also be doing the necessary value addition which would be relevant for your prelims examination. So stay tuned. So beginning with the first topic, which is related to India-UK relations. This particular topic is relevant from a GS paper 2 perspective. Why we are discussing India-UK relation? Because recently the two countries have finalized the free trade agreement between them. Now, in this backdrop, the first thing that we need to understand is the history of relation when it comes to the two nations. So after the independence, when India became a republic in 1950, India decided to be a part of the Commonwealth of Nations. But during the Cold War period, we witnessed strained relation between the two countries because India was a part of NAM, non-alignment movement, whereas UK was basically a NATO ally. Okay, it was a part of the NATO grouping. And UK at that time opposed India's war with Pakistan that we had in 1965 and 1971. And it also opposed India's nuclear test that we carried out in Pokhran in 1974. Which was codenamed as Smiling Buddha. But after India introduced LPG reforms in 1990s, thereafter we have witnessed an improvement in the relation when it comes to the two countries. The two countries have started focusing upon trade and investment. And the two countries have upgraded their relation to strategic partnership in 2004. What do we mean by strategic partnership? Wherein the two countries are outlining that we are going to maintain a strong long-term relation, okay, to achieve some mutual strategic goals, and they would be cooperating when it comes to different sectors like defense, technology, climate change, carrying out cultural exchange, etc. Okay, so we witness an improvement in the relation when it comes to the two countries. Now let's just understand the significance of this India-UK relation. So this relation is important from geostrategic point of view. Why? India needs UK so that we can counter the Chinese presence when it comes to Indian Ocean region. And UK needs India. Why? To basically go with its China plus one strategy. Right now, if you people have been following the newspaper, you must be aware of this thing, that the trade war is getting intensified between USA and China. Now in this backdrop, the UK companies are trying to shift their production bases outside China. Okay, so they are looking India as an option, okay, wherein they can set up their manufacturing bases, okay, apart from China. Then the relation is also significant from geopolitical point of view. The two countries, if they collaborate, they can put in place a rule-based order when it comes to Indo-Pacific. They can help in restoring democracy when it comes to Afghanistan. They can, improve the functioning of UN Security Council, etc. Then it is also relevant from the economic front, as the two countries have already finalized the free trade agreement. Now this free trade agreement is going to benefit both the nations. How? Because when it comes to 99% of India's export, it is now going to witness zero tariff when it comes to UK economy. So it is going to give a boost to the trade between the two countries, and this deal is expected to double the bilateral trade between the two countries by 2030. This deal is not just beneficial for India, it is also beneficial for UK. Why? Because the Britain whiskey and gin and automotive parts would now be facing very low tariff rates. Okay, basically negligible tariff rates they would be facing. And the reduced import duties when it comes to cosmetics, aerospace, medical devices, lamb, salmon, etc. This would be benefiting the Indian consumers. Why? Because when we will be eliminating the tariff, ultimately the price of that particular product would go down. So now you will be able to buy these products at a lesser price. Okay. And according to the government, this free trade agreement is going to give a boost to the India's labor intensive sectors. Why? Because under this trade agreement, UK is going to eliminate the tariffs when it comes to textile and footwear products when they would be entering into UK economy. Okay, so this would be giving a boost to the MSME sector in India. Then this trade agreement is also going to give a boost to India's services export. Why? Because under this agreement, the double contribution convention has been signed, under which the skilled Indian employees, okay, and whosoever is employing them in UK, they have been exempted from paying the social security contribution for 3 years. So this would be giving a further boost to skilled professional to move from India to UK. Okay, and we have already discussed this, that how it is going to benefit the UK economy as well. Then the relation between the two countries is also relevant from the climate change point of view, as US has opted out from the Paris Agreement. So the two countries could collaborate on the climate change front as well, as they are collaborating when it comes to One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative under the International Solar Alliance. Let's just look into other areas of growing convergence between the two countries. So the two countries are collaborating when it comes to the defense and security front. The both countries have signed Defense and International Security Partnership in 2015, which is enabling the two countries to put in place a strategic roadmap, okay, which would be enabling them to decide that how they are going to take their defense and security partnership in future. And the two countries also carry out various military exercises like Ajay Warrior, Cobra Warrior, Konkan exercise, etc. The two countries are also collaborating on the health front. Previously, during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Oxford University, AstraZeneca and Serum Institute of India, they collaborated when it comes to development of COVID-19 vaccines. Okay, so this showcase that the expertise that we have in UK and India, they can together, if they come together, they have the ability to solve the global health challenges. As the two countries are also collaborating on pandemic preparedness, antimicrobial resistance, digital health, Ayurveda, alternative medicines, etc. So we are witnessing huge convergence when it comes to health front also. Now, when you look at Indian diaspora, it consists of around 1.8% when it comes to UK population, and its contribution to British GDP is roughly around 6%. And you will be astonished to know that the 57th Prime Minister of UK, which is Rishi Sunak, he is also of Indian origin. And what we are witnessing in the recent time, that the people of Indian origin, their number is increasing when it comes to the British Parliament also. Then on the economic front, we have already discussed the free trade agreement that has been recently been signed between the two countries. Previously, in 2022, India was UK's 12th largest trading partner, and UK is the 6th largest investor when it comes to India throughout this time period, 2000 to 2023. And this free trade agreement is further going to give a boost to the trade and investment when it comes to the two countries. Now, we are also witnessing geopolitical cooperation between the two countries. So, UK supports India's proposal for permanent membership when it comes to UN Security Council. Let me know in the comment section that who all are the permanent member when it comes to UN Security Council and how many members are there in this particular body. And the two countries are also collaborating on different forums, okay, like they have the forum on nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. They have a joint working group on counter-terrorism. Now we have looked into the areas of cooperation. Let's just look into the challenges between the two nations. So UK is quite close to China. UK is substantially engaging when it comes to Belt and Road Initiative. But we know when it comes to India, we have raised concerns with regard to the China-Pakistan economic corridor as it goes against the sovereignty of India. And when it comes to the infrastructure project being developed by China under its Belt and Road Initiative and the string of pearls, this is perceived to be as a security threat for India. Okay, whereas when you talk about UK, it is substantially engaging when it comes to China's Belt and Road Initiative. Then when it comes to Khalistan issue, if you people have been following the newspaper, in this year only, when Mr. Jaishankar was on a visit to London, there was a security breach. And at the center of the security breach were basically the Khalistan protesters. If you look at UK population, Sikh basically consists of 1% of UK population. Okay, so it is alleged that UK provides support to this Khalistan separatists. This time and again strained the relation between the two countries, like the recent security breach when Mr. Jaishankar was on a visit to London. Then There are extradition issues also, although we have an extradition treaty between India and UK, but then also what we are witnessing, even today, we have not been able to extradite the fugitive offenders like Vijay Mallya and Nirav Modi. Then there is issue of illegal migrants also. There are roughly around 1 lakh illegal Indian immigrants when it comes to UK. UK government has been putting on pressure that they would be deporting these illegal immigrants back to India. But right now we don't have any such migration treaty which is enforced between the two countries. Then there is colonial legacy also. We know from our history books that India was one of the colonies of Britain, and it was because of the divide and rule policy of the colonial leaders that we witnessed partition of India, and due to this, Kashmir is a pertinent issue between India and Pakistan. Now in this backdrop, what steps the two countries needs to take in order to further strengthen their relationship? So first and foremost, in order to tackle the issue of illegal immigrants, the two countries should finalize an agreement on migration and mobility so that we can make sure that whosoever is migrating from India to UK, that should be a legal migration. Then we need to streamline the extradition process. UK should make sure that it's extradite the fugitive economic offenders which have taken a safe haven in London. Then the two countries should collaborate in others areas like counter-terrorism, like human assistance during disaster response and maritime security, especially in the Indo-Pacific region. And the two countries should jointly revive the multilateral institutions like the WTO, dispute settlement mechanism. Okay. Now, as US have opted out from the Paris Agreement, UK and India, they should come together and they should speak in favor of the developing nations. UK should provide the requisite climate finance which is needed by the developing economies. That's all that we need to cover when it comes to this particular issue. I have framed a practice question for you. So do practice this question and let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the next topic. Now, our next topic is related to civil services and the issue of lateral entry in civil services in India. This particular topic is relevant from our GS paper 2 perspective. So what is the context? So on the occasion of Civil Services Day, the Cabinet Secretary T.V. Somanathan has pointed out the importance of lateral entry. Now the first thing that we need to understand with regard to this particular issue is, what is the role of civil services when it comes to India's democracy? So civil servants have played a remarkable role when it comes to ensuring free and fair election in India, and the remarkable role done by TN Session. Then they help in maintaining the continuity in the governance, even when there is a change in the government, even when certain states are under the president rule, because civil servants are a part of the permanent executive. So that is the reason they help in maintaining continuity in governance also. Then they help in formulation of the welfare policies, as they have the repository of institutional knowledge. They help the ministers and the government to figure out the areas which needs intervention. Okay, what all alternatives could be there, what needs to be done to address a particular issue. Then they play a remarkable role when it comes to execution and monitoring of programs, and civil servants also act as a communication link between the people and the government. Okay, since they act as a communication link between the two, they are very well able to give a voice to the concerns of the people. They are able to communicate that what all areas needs intervention, and they also play a role when it comes to implementation of various policies also. For example, you can quote certain good examples like Chanchal Rana, who was district magistrate in Balangir district of Odisha. The Balangir district basically came up with Swikriti, which intended to give a voice to the transgender, basically bringing them into the mainstream society and incorporating them when it comes to the social welfare schemes also. Then they act as a crisis handler. The Bhilwara model of COVID-19 management was appreciated across the world. Okay, so they help in crisis handling also. Now, what are the issues which are impacting civil services when it comes to India? So first and foremost is the politicization of bureaucracy. We are witnessing political interference in various domains, especially with respect to transfer. Now, due to frequent transfer, for example, Ashok Khemka, who has been transferred more than 50 times, this severely impacts the autonomy when it comes to civil servants. They are not able to take the decision in a transparent manner and in an autonomous manner. Now, when it comes to the career civil servants, they are generalistic in nature. Okay, they don't have the requisite technical expertise which is needed to effectively address the issues that we are witnessing right now. For example, if the government wants to come up with a policy to regulate the genetically modified crops, then we need the expert inputs from a person who has worked as a microbiologist. Similarly, in order to effectively tackle the cyber incidents that we are witnessing now and then, for that, I need the expert inputs from a person who has worked as a cyber expert. Then we are witnessing corruption related instance when it comes to civil servants. And this is because of lack of adequate protection when it comes to Whistleblower Act of 2014. If I want to make a complaint against a civil servant, I cannot make an anonymous complaint. Even though I am making a true complaint, I need to disclose my identity. And if I'm disclosing my identity, obviously, if through any channel that civil servant get to know my identity, I would be facing harassment. Then another provision when it comes to Whistleblower Act is, if I'm making a false complaint or a malified complaint, then I would be put behind the bars for a time period of 2 years, or a fine would be imposed on me, roughly 30,000. So because of these loopholes in the Whistleblower Act, we are witnessing a rise in corruption related instances when it comes to civil services in India. Then when it comes to civil servants, the civil services in India is majorly focusing upon the processes and not on the outcomes. And that is the reason we are witnessing a rise in bureaucratic red tapeism, wherein the bureaucracy is only focusing upon the procedure that needs to be followed. It is not focusing upon the ultimate end, that is the welfare of the people. And due to this, we witness delay in decision making also. Then there is lack of incentive system also, because when it comes to promotions, when it comes to civil services, it is majorly based on the seniority. Okay, and when it comes to the bureaucrats who are actually doing a remarkable role, they are punished with frequent transfers. Now, in this backdrop, the Cabinet Secretary has pointed out towards the need of lateral entry. What we need to understand is, what is this lateral entry all about? So lateral entry basically means when the government would be appointing a person who has already worked as a domain expertise in the private sector at the middle or senior management level post for a tenure of roughly 3 to 5 years. And why the Cabinet Secretary has pointed out that we need lateral entrance? We have discussed this previously. That is to deal with the complex issues that we are witnessing in the current scenario, like regulating the genetically modified crops, or in order to effectively tackle the cyber incidents that we are witnessing, new forms of cyber incidents. Then we need to understand what is the significance of lateral entry. So it helps us in strengthening the participatory governance, because you are getting the people from NGOs, you are getting the people who have worked in the private sector. So such people would also be able to contribute to the governance. So that is why it would help us in strengthening the participatory governance also. They would be bringing their expertise. Then because of the expertise which these people come up with, the lateral entrants come up with, they help us in improving the efficiency of the governance process. And we have various examples like Montek Singh Ahluwalia, who was a member of Planning Commission, Vijay Kelkar, who became a member of Ministry of Finance, and the expert inputs of Parameshwaran Iyer in the Swachh Bharat mission. So the expertise which these people have, that helped us in enhancing the efficiency when it comes to governance. Then when we would be incorporating these lateral entrants who have the domain expertise, they would help us in making the policy response more better, efficient and more proactive. This would help us in changing the work culture also, because this would further incentivize the career civil servants to develop the domain expertise in a particular area as well. And this would also incentivize the career civil servants to make the government mechanism more proactive, okay? And they should also focus upon the ends, not majorly on the means. So this would help us in doing away with the red tapeism also. Then it would help us in augmenting the vacancies that we are witnessing when it comes to the IS officer according to Department of Personnel and Training. Roughly across the center and the state level, we have a shortage of more than 1,500 IAS officer. So when we'll be recruiting these domain experts as lateral entrants, this would also enable us to deal with the vacancies, okay, when it comes to civil servants. Although we have pointed out that, okay, what is the significance of lateral entry? What are the challenges that we'll be witnessing if we allow lateral entry? First and foremost, we will be witnessing the outsider syndrome. So if you allow the lateral entrants to enter into the civil service, the career civil servants, okay, who are actually recruited through this UPSC examination, which all people are preparing for, they at time become hostile towards them, okay, and they would not enable them to further understand that how this governance mechanism actually work, because when it comes to career civil servants, they are well aware of how this administrative machinery actually works, and they at time becomes hostile towards the lateral entrants. So it would become very difficult for the lateral entrants to actually bring the change on the ground. Then another issue that we might witness when it comes to lateral entrant is, let's suppose a lateral entrant has worked with a company X. Now we have incorporated him in the civil servants, okay, as a lateral entrant. Now the government is going to come up with some policies for regulating the companies. So this person who was previously associated with this company, he might give certain favors when it comes to this particular company. So there is issue of objectivity and neutrality also. There could be concerns of conflict of interest also. Then another issue is sidelining of reservation policy. So if you people have been following the newspaper, previously UPSC tried to fill roughly 45 posts through lateral entry, but since it did not take into account the reservation thing, so it has to take back that post, whatever advertisement it has brought up. Then the lateral entrants, as I told you, they would be having a short tenure of 3 to 5 years only. So within this short time span, it becomes very difficult to bring the change on the ground, and that too when they are not well versed with how the administrative machinery actually functions. Then this I have pointed out only, that when it comes to lateral entrant, they are not familiar with the administrative complexity. But when you talk about the IAS officer, career civil servants, okay, who have worked at the ground level, and after 10-15 years when they become the joint secretary, they are very well versed with the ground realities, and that is the reason we said that they are a repository of institutional knowledge. They know how the administrative machinery functions, and they know the loopholes, and that is the reason they are able to contribute effectively when it comes to policy making. And because of this institutional knowledge that they have, they are able to give better feedback when it comes to policy formulation and effective redressal of the issues. But when it comes to lateral entrants, they are not well versed with this complexity. So how they would be able to bring the change at the ground? So that is another concern. So in this backdrop, what we need to do? So we need to maintain a balance between the career civil servants and the lateral entrants, so that we don't witness outsider syndrome. Okay, so that the career civil servants are not having a hostile attitude when it comes to the lateral entrants. And how we can do that? By allowing the lateral entry in a phased manner, only in certain technical sector, like when it comes to regulating the genetically modified crops. For that you can incorporate microbiologists. In the financial domain, in the defense domain, you can allow the technical expertise to be entering into the civil servants. So allow lateral entry in a phased manner, and that too in certain limited areas only. Okay, so that we can maintain a balance. And why the career civil servants have a hostile attitude towards the lateral entrant? Because they perceive them as a threat when it comes to their promotions. So we can address this outsider syndrome by maintaining a balance, by going with the lateral entry in a phased manner and allowing it only in certain sectors only. Then we need to increase the tenure when it comes to career civil servants. They should not be punished with frequent transfer. One reason that we discussed is why the career civil servants are not able to develop the domain expertise, because frequent transfers is something which hinder them to develop the domain expertise. So we need to make sure that the career civil servants are not frequently transferred, and we need to provide them the requisite autonomy when it comes to their functioning, so that they can develop the domain expertise also. Okay. Then we need to assimilate the lateral entrants when it comes to bureaucratic structure. How we can do that? So when it comes to lateral entry, we can prioritize those people who have already done some consultation work for the government, or we can organize 1 year training program for them with the state government so that they become well versed with the administrative machinery, how it functions. Only then they will be able to effectively contribute when it comes to the policy making. And when it comes to their appointment process, we need to put in place a transparent appointment mechanism as was recommended by the second ARC report as well. So the government, whenever it is coming up with the advertisements for the post to be filled through lateral entry, it should clearly outline what is the job role, what is the qualification or eligibility criteria, and what are roles they have to perform. So there should be transparency when it comes to the appointment procedure also when it comes to lateral entry. And lastly, in order to secure the interest of the vulnerable section, that is SC, ST, OBC, we need to make sure that we are taking into account the reservation policy also when we are recruiting the people through lateral entry. And lastly, in order to overall reform the bureaucracy, we need to make sure that our bureaucracy is skilled, open and connected. How we do that? When it comes to skill bureaucracy, the bureaucracy should collaborate with the private sector. Why we are bringing experts from the private sector? Because private sector is known for their efficiency and expertise. So let's just collaborate the bureaucracy with the private sector so that the career civil servants can also learn from them. Okay, the expertise, the domain expertise they could learn. They could learn the efficient mechanism also. Okay, how we can do away with the red tapeism, that is also something that they can learn. So by collaborating with the private sector, they could develop expertise and they can develop efficiency also. Then we need to make sure that our bureaucracy is open. How do we make that? Whenever we are formulating any policy, we need to carry out multi-stakeholder consultation with the private sector, with the NGOs, etc. And whatever work is being done by the bureaucracy, they need to be transparent with respect to that. Okay, so social audits needs to be carried out on a regular basis. Citizens charter needs to be implemented effectively. Okay, that would make sure that our bureaucracy is open bureaucracy. And lastly, we need to have a connected bureaucracy. So when it comes to bureaucracy, it works in silos. We need to go with whole of the government approach. So there should be interdepartmental, conversation, communications, that would enable us to put in place a connected bureaucracy. And another aspect that you can write in connected bureaucracy is we should learn from the international good practices also. Okay, so that would enable us to realize the idea of minimum government, maximum governance. With this, we have come to end of this particular topic. I have framed a practice question for you people. So do practice this question and let us know your answers in the comment section. With this, let's move on to the simplified section. Now, moving on to the simplified section, an interview with the former Finance Commission Chairman N.K. Singh has appeared with respect to the MSME sector in the Indian Express. This particular topic is relevant from a GS paper 3 perspective. Whatever is relevant I have highlighted, but we'll be understanding this particular issue in a simplified manner. Now, recently, the World Bank has come up with its report wherein it has highlighted that when it comes to the developing nations like India, they would be witnessing what? 1.2 billion youth would be entering into the working age population. Working age population is roughly 16 years to 64 years. But the concerning fact which the World Bank in its report has highlighted that these developing economies would not be in a position to generate jobs for even 300 million youths. In this backdrop, N.K. Singh has pointed out that when it comes to India, we need to focus upon the MSME sector to bridge this employment gap. Now, before we look onto the significance of MSME sector, the challenges faced by this sector, you need to make note of the revision when it comes to the investment limit and the turnover limit when it comes to MSMEs, okay, in this year budget. So if you recall the previous investment limit and the previous turnover limit, what you have to just do is, when it comes to investment limit, just multiply it by 2.5. When it comes to the previous turnover limit, just multiply it by 2 and you will be getting the new investment limits and the turnover limit. Okay, I have put in this image. You can pause the video and memorize the facts, because in this year prelims this fact could be asked with regard to investment limit and turnover limit with respect to micro, small and medium enterprises. How do we do the categorization? And one more thing that you need to keep in mind is, irrespective of the fact that MSMEs enterprise is working in the manufacturing sector or the services sector, we have the same criteria for both of them. Okay. when it comes to investment limit and when it comes to the turnover limit. Now, what is the significance of this particular sector? So, this is a labor intensive sector, so it provides employment to roughly around 150 million youth, which comprise roughly 40% of our labor force. What is labor force? Labor force basically consists of the people who are already working or who are actively seeking for employment. Let me know in the comment section, do you actually come when it comes to the concept of labor force, okay, or not? When it comes to contribution of the sector to GDP, it is roughly around 30%, and they contribute to the export sector also roughly around 45%. Now, what are the challenges which this sector is facing? First and foremost is the issue with respect to access to formal credit. If you go by the report of RBI committee, only 14% of our MSMEs have access to formal bank credit. And that is the reason when it comes to this particular sector, we have a credit gap or roughly around 25 lakh crore. But when you look at the other countries like China and USA, therein 37% and 50% respectively, MSMEs are able to access to formal credit. But the number is quite low when it comes to India. It is merely 14%. Then there is issue with the compliance when it comes to ensuring compliance to factory laws, ensuring compliance to labor laws, okay. When it comes to the larger corporate houses, they can hire the professionals who can find out the loopholes in these factory and labor laws, and they can reduce their compliance burden. But when it comes to MSMEs, they don't have that much of finances, okay. So they face issue when it comes to compliance also with respect to factory and labor laws. And that is the reason this year economic survey has pointed out that the government needs to do deregulation. That means we need to reduce the compliance burden. We need to reduce the number of factory as well as labor laws which are there in India. Then this issue is also suffering from informalization. More number of MSME sectors are basically working in the informal sector. And why it is a problem? Because when an enterprise is working in the informal sector, the government is not able to get the adequate data with regard to how many people are working, how many enterprises are there. And this affects evidence-based policy making. And this also affects their access to institutional support also. Then we are missing the issue of phenomena of missing middle when it comes to MSME sector. 99% of the MSMEs are basically the micro. We don't see the medium-based enterprises which have huge potential to generate jobs, okay. And why it is so? Because of the rigid labor laws and the factory laws which are there, because of the regulatory cholesterol that we have in case of India. So we need to address that. And lastly, they face issue with respect to infrastructure also. It is becoming difficult for them to integrate effectively into the global value chains, into the Indian value chains. Why? Because they come up with substandard products also. There is inadequate branding. And when it comes to exports, their products have to face stringent quality standards. Especially I am referring to non-tariff barriers, sanitary and phytosanitary measures. Okay. So because of stringent quality controls and quality standards, their integration into the global value chain is also a challenge. What all steps the government has taken? So we are providing them loan under the Mudra Yojana. We are making sure that we have the requisite data and we can ensure their access to institutional support. How? Through JAM Trinity, Jan Aadhaar and Mobile Trinity. Then we are going with the cluster based approach, okay. In a particular cluster, we are providing the infrastructure that they need, whatever institutional support they need, and this is something that we are doing under the Spurti scheme. One of the important clusters we have in Tamil Nadu. Then we are improving or simplifying their registration thing under the Udyam portal, and the government is also improving their market access. How? By procuring a lot of goods which are produced by the MSME sector under the government e-marketplace. The former Finance Commission Chairman N.K. Singh has also pointed out that we need to learn from the international best practices also. For example, when it comes to Kenya, how it is providing finance to the MSME sector through a mobile-based payment system, M-Pesa. Then Vietnam is going with the cluster-based approach. This is something that we need to incorporate in India also. Okay, cluster-based approach basically helps in improving the economies of scale, because at one place only we are providing all the requisite facilities, water, electricity, better connectivity, etc. That helps in realizing the economies of scale. So this is something that we need to learn from Vietnam also. And when it comes to South Africa, we need to learn blended finance, wherein the public sector and the private sector, they come together and they finance the social and environmental projects which are there. Okay, so this is something that we can incorporate when it comes to India also. That's all when it comes to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now today, we are going to witness civil defense drill. This particular topic is relevant from a prelims perspective. Whatever is relevant, I have highlighted, but we'll be understanding this particular issue in a simplified manner. Now, in the wake of recent terrorist attack in the Pahalgam, central government has directed all the states and the UTs to conduct the civil defense drill today, which would be carried out across 244 categorized civil defense districts. Now, this civil defense drill, is it peculiar to India only, or this is something that we observe in other countries also? So the answer is no, it is not just peculiar to India, because previously in 2023 we witnessed such kind of a drill in South Korea also, when the North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. And this is something that we witnessed in Ukraine also before Russia invasion on Ukraine. So this is something which is in place in other countries also. And last time we conducted such civil defense drill on a massive scale in 1971, when India was recovering from the Indo-Pak war, okay, the effects of Indo-Pak war. Now, what are these civil defense district? Because in the context I told you that the civil defense drill would be conducted today, where in 244 categorized civil defense districts. How do we figure out that which district should be categorized as civil defense districts? So these civil defense districts are basically the demarcated towns and districts which are categorized so based on the recommendation of Ministry of Defense. And how do we categorize? What are the parameters that we look into? So we look into their location, whether they are situated near the borders. So if they are near the borders, they would be more vulnerable to attack. Then we look into that some vital installation is in place when it comes to that particular district or not. Vital installation, that means whether there is a nuclear power plant, thermal power plant, or key government buildings are situated there, for example, Delhi. Then whether that district has some critical infrastructure, for example, railways, major highways, national highways, ports, etc. So based on these parameters, the Ministry of Defense recommend that this particular district should be categorized as civil defense district. In 2010, we have roughly around 259 civil defense districts, and they were categorized in three phases, okay, three categories. First category requires full implementation of civil defense program, and second and third category, we had partial implementation of this civil defense program in various degrees. We are not going to get into that much detail. And in 2023, January, 295 civil defense districts were identified. But when you talk about today, when I say the civil defense drill needs to be conducted today, it would be carried out only in 244 civil defense districts. Now, what we are going to do in this drill? We are going to assess the effectiveness of air raid warning system, okay, whether we are able to give warning to the civilians, etc., the forces or not. We will be checking the effectiveness of the radio communication links with Indian Air Force. We will be testing the functionality of our control rooms. We will be training the civilians, the students, that how they have to protect themselves in case of there is a aerial or ground assault. What safety protocols they have to follow in such scenario. Then we will be witnessing activation of civil defense services like firefighting, rescue teams, depot, etc. Then we will be protecting the vital installation, critical infrastructure which is there in place when it comes to civil defense districts, because I told you one of the parameter is we will be looking into that whether this district encompasses some critical infrastructure or some vital installations or not. And we will be witnessing direct participation of the civil defense units, basically your district controllers, home guard, national cadet corps, etc. Now this mock drill is basically being conducted under the Civil Defence Act of 1968, which gives the government a wide range of powers. So this act gives the government the power that it can restrict the movement, it can impose curfews, it can close the roads, ports, transport services during the emergency as and when it feels so. Then it can detain or arrest a person without the usual legal process. Okay. What is this usual legal process? Let me know in the comment section, everyone, which is outlined in our fundamental right also. Then it can also compulsorily acquire property, requisition of services, control the supply and distribution of goods, especially the essentials. And the government can also direct individuals to perform certain kind of work or duties, and it can also control industries that are crucial to our national security. The law also empowers the government to regulate and censor communication, publication and broadcast. So the government basically get these wide-ranging powers through the Civil Defence Act. Now, why this civil defence mock drill is relevant? As the societies are witnessing extreme weather events, as we are witnessing, rise in terror-based incidents, so such mock drills are becoming more and more important. They are working as a emergency management and disaster risk reduction systems. Okay, so in the light of extreme weather events, in the light of the terrorist attacks increasing, such mock drills becomes all the more relevant and crucial. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. So recently, Department of Telecommunication has come up with the rules to regulate the satellite communication companies in India. This particular topic is relevant from our PIMS perspective. Now these guidelines are basically focusing upon these things: local manufacturing, data localization, transition towards domestic navigation system, cooperation with the law enforcement agencies and blocking mechanism. Let's look into these elements one by one. When I talk about local manufacturing, so under these guidelines, Department of Telecommunication has clearly stated that the satellite communication companies have to share with the government their year-wise phase manufacturing plan. Why? What is going on in the back of the mind of the government? So government is making these satellite communication companies to share their year-wise phase manufacturing plan. Why? Because at the end of 5 years, we are aiming that at least 20% of the ground segment when it comes to satellite network, this should be from Indian sources. Okay, so we are focusing upon local manufacturing and Indianization. Then another aspect is transition towards domestic navigation system. So under this guideline, the satellite communication companies have to make a transition towards the regional navigation system, that is NAVIC, and that they have to do by 2029. NAVIC is basically India's regional satellite navigation system. It is just like GPS, okay, which was developed by United States. Why the government is focusing upon this thing, that these satellite communication companies should make a transition towards NAVIC, which is India's regional navigation system, keeping in mind the recent terror attack which has took place in Jammu and Kashmir. Okay. Then it is focusing upon data localization. So under this guideline, what the satellite communication companies have to do, they have to make sure that their data centers are based within the geographical boundary of India. So India is going with the concept of geofencing. Okay, and they have to submit an undertaking that they will not be copying and decrypting the India telecom data outside India. Okay, so Indian users' data should remain within India. That is what is geofencing. Okay, and that is what is India is going with data localization. And the government, keeping in light the recent terror attack which has took place in Jammu and Kashmir, what the guideline is stating, that these companies have to collaborate, they have to cooperate with the law enforcement agencies. Okay, so they have to provide the domain name system resolution within the territory. This DNS basically enable the enforcement agencies to track the IP address, and they have to provide for lawful inscription facilities also. And keeping in mind the national security concerns, these guideline has clearly stated that if the government would be ordering, then these satellite communication the companies have to restrict their services to any particular individual or a group of subscriber when it comes to a certain geographical location, okay, in case of hostilities. And all these satellite communication companies like Starlink, like the Amazon Kuiper, OneWeb, etc., they have to they have to seek a separate clearance, especially from the security angle, for providing voice-based services and data services in India. And this is becoming important because currently the Starlink, which is planning to provide satellite-based internet services in India, it is undergoing security clearance, okay, for the same. Now, what we need to understand from a prelims perspective is how the satellite internet actually works. So, in satellite internet, we have a satellite which either would be placed in lower Earth orbit or in the geostationary orbit. And we will be having the network operators hub here, okay, center hub, and we will be having the users here, and the user's PC would be connected through a modem, and this modem would be connected to a satellite dish. So we'll be having a satellite dish here also, we'll be having a satellite dish here also, okay, wherein we have the networks operating centers. So once this user would be trying to retrieve an email or download a photo, this satellite dish would be sending the signal to this satellite which is there in the space, and the signal would be sent in form of radio waves. Now this satellite would be sending this request to the network operator, and this network operator would be processing this request of the user, and then the satellite dish here again would be processing this request and sending it to the satellite in space, and then accordingly in form of radio waves again the internet signal would be sent to the satellite dish which is situated near the user, and then this link would be transferred to the modem, and then this modem would be transferring this in the user PC, and that is how you will be able to access the internet services. Okay, herein we are not making use of optical fibers. We are making use of satellite which is there in the space. Now, as I told you, this satellite, we can place it in two orbits. One is lower Earth orbit, okay, which is up to 2000 km. One is your geostationary orbit. What are the advantages if I place a satellite in the lower Earth orbit? So, in this case, it would be cost effective because I don't need to use very powerful launch vehicles, okay, to launch the satellite. So, it would be cost effective. And since this satellite which is in lower Earth orbit, it is quite close to the Earth, so there would be minimum latency. That means once I want to download an image or whatever request I am sending, it would be processed in a less amount of time. So there would be minimal latency, okay. And since the satellite is quite close to the Earth, so you are able to download high resolution images also. But what are the disadvantages if I place the satellite in lower Earth orbit? Now see, it is cost effective from this point of view that you need to not use very powerful launch vehicles, but it is costly also because in order to cover the entire Earth, you have to launch a web of satellites in the low Earth orbit, okay. So from that perspective, it would be costly. Then another issue with this low Earth orbit is it is not able to cover a huge area, okay. That is why it has minimal latency. The internet speed is quite well, but you are able to cover a very less amount of area, and linking with the satellite is also an issue because it keeps on orbiting, okay. Then when it comes to geostationary orbits, if I place a satellite in this orbit, what is the benefit? Now when I place a satellite in this geostationary orbit, why the name is geostationary, you need to understand this. This satellite would be completing its revolution across the Earth in the same time in which Earth completes its one rotation. So that is the reason the ground observer would be seeing the satellite at same position, okay. So for the ground observer, this satellite which is placed in geostationary orbit would remain stationary, okay. Now when it comes to this satellites which are placed in geostationary orbits, what is the benefit if I try to provide satellite based internet services through satellites placed in this orbit? So with the help of only 3-4 satellites, I can cover the entire planet. Okay, I can cover the entire Earth. Okay, so from that perspective, it is cost effective, but then you need to use very powerful launch vehicles for that. So from that perspective, it would be a costly affair. Then linking is easier because for the ground observer, it remains stationary and at one position. And since it remains stationary at one position when you look from the perspective of ground observer, it is used for remote sensing also because it can take the images of same place at different intervals also. Okay, so that is why the satellites which are placed in geostationary orbits, they are also used for remote sensing. But then what is the issue if I use geostationary orbits? It requires huge cost because you need very powerful launch vehicles also. Here the internet speed would be quite low. So latency would be higher, and you will not be able to download very high resolution images because it is situated at a great height from the earth. Okay, so these are the benefits and the disadvantages when it comes to the satellites which are placed in lower earth orbit or in the geostationary orbits for providing satellite based internet services. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the next one. Now, recently the ISRO chief has stated that the Gaganyaan manned mission would likely be launched in the first quarter of 2027. This particular topic is relevant from a science and technology section. But before that, the ISRO chief has pointed out that we will be carrying out 3 test launches. 2 would be uncrewed, that means there would be no man in that launch, and 1 would be done with the robot. Robot is basically your Vyom Mitra, this. Okay. This mission was supposed to be launched by 2022, but because of COVID-19 pandemic, okay, because of the lockdown, because the ISRO have to carry out a lot of test launches, okay, crewed, uncrewed, and because currently the astronauts who have to be sent in this Gaganyaan mission, they are undergoing training also. So because of these factors, we have witnessed a delay when it comes to this Gaganyaan manned mission, which was likely to be launched in 2022. So this ISRO chief has also made a reference to Axiom-4, which is a private space mission on which one of our Indian astronaut, Shubhanshu Shukla, would be sent to International Space Station. Now, whatever experience Shubhanshu Shukla would be gaining with the help of this particular space mission, that is Axiom-4, that would be relevant for us to effectively designing the Gaganyaan mission. Why? When Shubhanshu Shukla would be sent to International Space Station, he would be able to understand effectively how the human body reacts under microgravity, what are the impacts of microgravity on human health, how we can grow the crops under microgravity. So all this would be helping us to effectively design the Gaganyaan mission, okay, so that we can minimize the impact of microgravity when it comes to human health. We can make sure that the astronauts get adequate amount of food also even under microgravity. So all these things would be taken care of. Now, what we need to understand, certain prelim pointers with regard to Gaganyaan mission. So it would be the first human space flight program of ISRO, and if we are able to realize it by the first quarter of 2027, we will become the 4th nation in the world to launch a human space flight mission after USA, Russia and China. Now, what we are going to do in this mission? So it is a manned space flight mission. So in this manned space flight mission, we will be having 3 astronauts who would be sent to a height of around 400 km, basically in the low Earth orbit, and they would be sent to the lower Earth orbit for 3 days. After 3 days, we will be bringing them back safely on the Earth, and we will be doing the landing in the Indian sea waters. Basically, the landing is done in Bay of Bengal, okay, to make sure that they return to the Earth safely also. Now, when it comes to Gaganyaan mission, it would be having 2 payloads. So, one is basically a crew model, so it would be having the human astronauts, and one would be the service model which would be powered by 2 liquid propellant engine, and we will be using the launch vehicle Mark III, that is GSLV Mark III, for launching this Gaganyaan mission. Currently, we are collaborating with Russia and France when it comes to training the astronauts also. That's all that we need to know with regard to this particular topic. Let's move on to the last topic of today's analyst. So, recently, India has improved its ranking when it comes to the recent Human Development Index. This particular topic is relevant from our prelims perspective. So, whatever is relevant I have highlighted, we'll be understanding this particular issue in a simplified manner. Now, let's just understand certain prelim facts with regard to Human Development Index. So, this index is released by UNDP, United Nations Development Programme, and this index is basically based on the work of Pakistan economist, that is Mahbub ul Haq, and it is also based on the work of Amartya Sen capabilities approach, wherein we look into that whether an individual is able to do whatever he or she wants to achieve in life or not. And when it comes to this index, we have these 3 dimensions, that is health, education and standard of living. And what are the indicators that we use to look into health, education and standard of living? So when it comes to health, we track life expectancy at birth. When it comes to education, we look into expected years of schooling and mean years of schooling. And when it comes to standard of living, we track GNI per capita, that is in purchasing power parity terms. How do we get the GNI purchasing power parity terms? So we need to consider a common consumption basket, wherein we will be considering the goods which are consumed across different countries. Okay, so if I want to compare GNI in purchasing power parity terms when it comes to India and US, so I need to create a common consumption basket, and I'll be looking into that how many rupees I need to buy this common consumption basket, and I'll be looking into that how many dollars I need to buy this common consumption basket, and that is how you create this GNI in purchasing power parity terms. Now when it comes to your HDI, it is roughly between 0 and 1. So if you are close to 1, that means the human development indicators are quite well when it comes to a particular country, and if you are close to 0, that means the country is not taking care of the human development. Okay. Now let's look into what the report has to say when it comes to India's performance. So India has improved its ranking. It has moved 3 spots. Currently, its ranking is 130 out of 193 countries, and there's an improvement in HDI value also, as you can see from this graph also, that previously we were at 0.676 in 2022, and now we are at 0.685. Okay, so there is an improvement in the human development when it comes to India. Report has also said that when it comes to India's HDI value, it has increased by 53% since 1990, and this improvement is one of the fastest when it comes to South Asian region. Then we have witnessed 4-time improvement when it comes to gross national income since 1990. We have been able to reduce the multidimensional poverty also. Roughly 135 million people when it comes to India have been able to escape the multidimensional poverty between 2015-16 and 2019-21. We have witnessed improvement in life expectancy also. In 1990, the life expectancy was 58.6 years. Now it is roughly around 72 years. But the problem which this report highlights with respect to India is there is high inequality in India, and that is the reason we have less HDI score also. When it comes to this report, it has highlighted that when it comes to India, we have made remarkable improvement when it comes to access to healthcare, access to education services. So inequality has gone down when it comes to health and education. But we are witnessing inequality when it comes to gender, when it comes to income. Okay, so there is huge gender pay gap which is still persisting in India. And we are also witnessing the gender inequality when it comes to the representation of women, when it comes to legislatures and your parliament. And lastly, the report has pointed out that if you look at the global level, there has been a slowdown when it comes to human development. And the current pace of progress is slowest since 1990. That's all that we need to know from today's Analyst. Quiz would be coming right up next. So don't forget to practice the quiz and check the knowledge that you have gained with the help of this session. Till then, keep smiling, keep learning. Have a very good day all of you.